Pucks with Haggs
is brought to you by Prize Picks and the Game Time app.
Welcome to another edition of the Pucks with Haggs podcast, powered by Prize Picks, the exclusive daily fantasy partner of the CLNS Media Network. I believe it's the 121st episode of the Pucks with Haggs podcast. Welcome to the show. I am your host, Joe Haggerty. You find my work at joehaggerty.substack.com. Subscribe for a premium membership. Get all of my NHL and Bruins writing sent straight directly to your inbox. You can also find my work at Boston Sports Journal. Go to bostonsportsjournal.com. I write columns there on the Bruins 3 times a week. And now that we're getting into the nitty-gritty of captains' practices and training camp, the stuff will be getting really interesting over there. So I do recommend that you check it out. With me today, friend and colleague Evan Marinovsky from the New England Hockey Journal. Also, you may see his smiling face on NESN on the New England Hockey Journal show as well. Evan, welcome to the show, my friend.
Thank you for having me. When you said that you might see his smiling face as you're saying it, I was like, where would you see it? I was thinking, like, what's he going to say? But yes, so it's start of the year, Haggs. All hockey is starting, so it's just a lot of weekends spent in rinks. You know what that's like, and
yes,
captain's practice is beginning. It's nice. I like this time of year. It's fun.
I'm going to a rink right after this recording with Finn. His first season practice this season with the Greater Boston Vipers, so that should be a good
I was a Viper. I was a Viper
really?
back in the day. I was a Viper. Do they still Is it still out of Revere?
Yeah, Cronin. That's where we're going.
Yes, those are the
days.
Correct.
Which, like, where we're going from Newton, it's like 25 minutes at rush hour. It's awesome. I don't know what kind of magic door I go through, what kind of portal I'm going through to get from Newton to Revere in 25 minutes at like 5:30, 6 o'clock at night, but I will take it. It's fantastic. As you mentioned, we are on the precipice of rinks all the time, hockey all the time. Like we're right about to, like, on the surfboard, right about to go and take on that wave. Like you could see it and you're like, am I going to do it again this year? And you're like, hell yeah.
Hell yeah, I am. That wave is going to last about 6-7 months. So
it is.
That wave, I don't think we're falling off that wave. Yeah. That's this time of year. It all just kicks into gear. And I like it. What are we, 4 days into September now? So
yes.
It's good. This is nice.
As soon as you get past Labor Day, your whole mindset, I think, shifts and goes back to hockey, youth hockey, high school, like the midget. They're doing the midget leagues, the high school kids, college hockey's ramping up. The captains' practices are happening. Like everywhere, everybody that plays hockey is now sort of getting into hockey mode, which is like awesome. I love it. That and back to school. When you start feeling that in September, it's just like instinctual. You know what I mean? It's like
I still feel it. And I hate that feeling, like the back to school feeling I never liked, but the hockey, like the back to hockey feeling I loved. I still love it. And I can imagine with kids, it's just, we got to hit Walmart to get all the supplies, or we got to hit Target to hit all the supplies. So it's fun. It's a fun time of year.
Yeah. Instead, I get the Dad, the new Trigger Pro 9 is out. Can we go to the store and get that for like $250? And I'm like, no, we're not getting that.
Sticks are insane now. It's
Trigger
ridiculous.
8 is on sale, last year's model. So we're just going to get another Trigger 8. And
yes,
I guarantee it's the same goddamn stick with the same shooting action and flex and everything else. So
I believe it now. I didn't believe it when I was that age when I wanted that stick. There's the difference. See, what kids, I'm like, I like it. Like Bauer, the last 2 years has released older sticks. They did the Easton Synergy last year, and I actually got one for men's league. It's yellow. It's awesome. Yeah. And this year they re-released the Easton S17, which was big in like 2009, 2010, and it was a good stick. I don't think I ever had it, but they are re-releasing it. It's like $200, and that's a top of the line stick, but from 15 years ago. And I think there was like 1 or 2 kids in college who might have used the Synergy last year. And if I had a kid, I'd be like, you're using that stick. Like, that's a high-end stick. That's cool. It's a throwback. Kids your age don't get it. Yeah. But you're going to use that stick because it's cheaper and it's cool. I think it's way cooler. But Evan, kids want to use the newest stick.
Finn's age all want the stupid all-white proto custom stick. Like, that's all of them want that. They wear the proto hats. They want the proto stick. Like, they want that freaking all white stick out on the ice, which, hey, I guess. I don't know. I don't get it.
Yeah. I remember when I was I was a little older than Finn. The Easton Mako came out. I don't know if anybody remembers that, but it was this all white stick that Easton put out. And I remember watching the videos. It was the first real high-end stick I wanted because I was just getting to that age. And in the video, they're like, they say black tape hides the puck, but what if the goalie can't see the stick? And I remember thinking, like, holy shit, I am going to score 50 goals this year because I am going to break hockey because the goalies won't be able to see my stick. And the blade was destroyed after like 2 months. I don't think I scored any goals. I was a defenseman. And yeah, but it still sits in my parents' garage. And every time I go past it, I get a little chuckle out of it. So
that's like, that is actually usually the fate of fin sticks. After 5 or 6 months, the blade is friggin' all chipped up and like peeling away and just dead. Like,
it's gross.
'Cause he's like an absolute savage in there, like digging out pucks and like slamming people and, digging it and puck battles with the sticks and stuff. He carves those sticks up like no time at all. They're just like absolute, like you can't even use them. Like there's the chip, the ends of the blade are all like hanging off and falling off.
Oh yeah. Or you run your hand along it when you're taking the tape off and you get like fiberglass in your finger. Here's the thing. I will say Bauer sticks, for me, historically, never had those problems, or at least not to the level that like other sticks did. Like I still have my Bauer stick that I have as a backup from like high school. And I use that for an entire season of high school hockey as a defenseman. So a lot of stick battles and things like that. The blade is fine. Whereas like the Easton Synergy, which Bauer re-released, but still it's an Easton stick. And I love Easton. They don't really do hockey anymore. But like that's even just from men's league. Is all chipped and the blade is like kind of messed up, and it's like, how does that happen? So I don't know, but I know everyone loves Warrior now, but Bauer, their sticks always were fine with me.
Okay, well that's good. I'm gonna keep that one in the memory bank. I like that.
Hopefully,
I like that advertisement for Bauer right there, Evan. That's
please sponsor us, please.
Yes, we're saying nice things about you, Bauer. Return the love. All right, Brad Marchand, Evan talked the other day. Let's start with that. The captain, after captain's practice on Tuesday, you were there. I was there. Talked for 20 minutes. Very enlightening stuff. Very interesting. Couple different things. The first was like obviously the injury stuff. When as soon as he said, "Yeah, I had 3 surgeries this summer." Everybody's like record scratch, like what? He had torn ligament in his left elbow. He had groin and sports hernia surgeries. So he basically said he didn't work out all summer. His whole summer usual workout routine was paused, shelved, stopped. He just started working out a couple weeks ago. It sounded like he hadn't been on the ice too many times before Tuesday. And he's basically said he's going to take the entire, preseason training camp to sort of treat it like the summertime and ramp himself up conditioning wise and get ready for the season. Did not guarantee that he's going to be full go at the start of training camp. And why should he be? At 36 years old, there's no reason for him to be like busting it on the first day of training camp.
No.
Let him like ramp up and get ready for like a couple preseason games at the end of preseason and be ready for the regular season. But I mean, it also sort of, it's a reminder that he's 36 and that, he's going to get banged up more. He plays a very physical style. There's no holds barred when he's out there. And as he gets older, he's probably going to get dinged up a little bit more. But to his credit, he played all 82 games last year. I think he played through that bum ligament in his elbow all season long or close to it. He said he played through that, and he got the sports hernia and the groin stuff towards the end of the year. So he's playing with that too, but that was towards the end. But I think as you get older, wear and tear, especially if you throw yourself into the frenzy, you're going to get banged up and you're going to have injuries. And I think this is just kind of a reality check that, this is him going forward. There's going to be, stuff that bangs him up and, maybe surgeries that he's going to have to do just because his body is aging and he's had a lot of miles on those tires.
That's the biggest thing. And I think, on one side of that, you have the reality, as you said, of him being 36. He had the 3 surgeries this summer. He had the double hip surgery 2 years ago. Yep. And, his style of play does not lend itself to longevity in any sport, someone who plays like that. And it does, he is undersized. So you have that all kind of, you have to take into consideration. So you do have to expect that. I don't think his production is going to be, going forward what it was 2-3 years ago. Like, I think you have to kind of be okay with that. And I think where his, standing in the lineup is, and you asked this, next to Coyle, I don't think they're necessarily expecting him to put up 80 points. I don't think he's going to do that for you.
No.
There's the other side of it, though.
Like what he did last year, 29 goals, 70 points, somewhere in there, like mid 20 goals, 60 to 70 points. I think that's reasonable.
You take that
you
from
take
him.
That.
Yes, yeah. I agree. And so this is the other thing, but there's the other side of it where I don't know if it was right before he mentioned this or after. I don't know if it was you or someone asked about sort of, how do you view training camp differently as an older player? And he mentioned, having to still make the team and young guys wanting to take his spot. Yep. And he mentioned an interesting point.
That asked that question.
Yeah. And he mentioned a very interesting point about why some guys sort of tail off in sort of the last couple of years of their careers. Yep. And it's because they have kids and they get involved with their kids and going to their stuff. And, and that's totally noble, by the way. Like, that's part of life. Whereas he kind of said, no, look, I really am focused on this. This is what I want, and he still has things he wants to do. Obviously, the Olympics is one of those things, Stanley Cups, all that stuff. And so to me, I mean, I don't think you're going to see that drop off. I also don't think you're going to see him retire at 39. Like, he seems to me, going off those comments he's made before, seems like someone who's going to play, as long as he possibly can.
Yeah.
And, I don't know what he's going to look like at 40.
I believe the phrase he's used is they're going to have to tear the jersey off my back for me to retire. Yeah.
So but I do think that, this season, I don't think fans should be alarmed. As you said, 60 points. Like, I don't think people should be alarmed at that. I think that's sort of what you have to expect. And it's on other guys going forward to pick up a lot of that slack, or not slack, but some of that offense that he's produced in years past. So, I don't think he's going to be, he's not going to stink. Like, nothing like that. I don't think you're going to see like some crazy drop off, but I do think that fans should understand that he's getting older now. And that's sort of the reality of it. Hasn't lost a step with the comments, hasn't lost a step with the leadership or anything like that.
No.
But I do think, he's getting older. That's 5 pretty big surgeries in 3 years. So I think it's something to obviously, monitor and watch.
Yeah, 100%. And the thing is, though, that like we don't need the Brad Marchand think pieces. Like, what is wrong with Brad Marchand? He's not
100%.
On pace for 40 goals and 85 points. It's like, no crap. He's 36.
Yeah,
like he's in a different stage of his career now, and I think the expectations have to be considered there. As to what they're not the perfection line anymore. It's not Bergeron and Marchand and Pastrnak running around and having these massive offensive seasons where they're all like ganging up on all these other teams and piling up the points. Like, it's just not the role that he's in anymore, but he's still a dynamic offensive player. He's one of those guys that, for a wing has the puck on his stick a lot. And, Patrick Kane style, like he's a guy that drives a line from the wing position on the line that he's on. And he's able to do that even now. Even if the numbers aren't as huge as they are, he's still a big driver when he's on the ice and he's doing his thing. And that's when you can tell how effective he is the offensive chances he's generating for himself, the time that he has the puck on his stick, all of that stuff. But it is interesting, though, that like the sort of decrease in production that we're talking about, the realistic decrease in production, and the age and the surgeries and all this other stuff, it lends itself into what he also talked about, which was his contract. And he's entering the last year of an 8-year deal where he's getting paid $6.125 million, which is an absolute steal for Brad Marchand and was a great team-friendly contract when he signed it. And, we kind of pestered him a little bit on the contract, and it was interesting what he said. I'll read it here. He goes, I'll say this now and kind of leave it at that. I won't ever talk about contract stuff in the media. Whatever happens will stay internal between Sweens and our group. I'll leave it at that. There's enough respect between the two sides to just deal with it. And we're going to get to that specific comment and that like paragraph in a little bit because I have some thoughts on that. But he went on to say, I don't feel like that because I'm going to a contract year. I just feel like you need every year to not get comfortable. And this is kind of what you were talking about, Evan. It's very easy, especially as you get older, when you've been around a long time and you've accomplished a lot of things you want to accomplish and you feel comfortable in your financial situation, to want to be around the house more with the kids, to be involved with their sports and activities and not be at the rink or gym as often. And that's where guys slip. The biggest factor is understanding that every year guys are coming in and gunning for jobs. It doesn't matter who you are. They're just as happy to take my spot as anyone else's. And I think that's great, his insight there, because that's the truth. That is exactly what players think.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
exactly what's on their mind. He is giving you not the apple pie, gee willikers, I'm glad to be in an NHL camp, like I'm fighting for my spot. Like he's giving you the actual, like what a veteran player is thinking in his head and what his real observation is of what he sees as sort of that circle of life in the NHL of veterans eventually sort of losing that fire and getting pushed out by hungry rookies that, don't have families, don't have kids, and don't have a lot of responsibilities. And it's just hockey, hockey, hockey all the time. And, they're more skilled than they've ever been. And they're coming in trying to take jobs and sign big contracts and be on the cover of VA Sports and all that other stuff. But, and it goes in line with what he was talking about last year during the playoffs when he was mentioning, like, you're out there trying to hurt guys.
I was going to say, he's got that great veteran presence, and he doesn't have any problem articulating it.
Well, he tells you the truth. Like, he tells you what they're actually thinking. He more than almost anybody else in the NHL, Brad Marchand will tell you exactly what all of those guys are thinking, and he's not afraid to do it. And I think it speaks to his courageousness at, like, he just doesn't care. He's going to tell it like it is. But I think it also speaks to, like, you can tell he was a massive hockey fan when he was a kid. Mm-hmm. And then he got to look behind the curtain at the Wizard of Oz, and he's, like, seen it all now. And he, like, loves to sort of
sausage is made.
And let everybody else know, like, what's actually going on there and provide that insight, because he knows there are other kids out there just like he was that are dying to have this information and want to know and want to know what it's really like. So all that stuff is just always gold from him. Like, he's one of the few guys in the NHL that will sit there and hold court for 20 minutes, and it's super interesting, almost everything he says, and he really gives you truth as opposed to, like, just, like, verbal diarrhea or get pucks deep, get pucks to the net, like garbage, like all that stuff.
And even like yesterday, it's day one of it's captain's practice. It's not even really official. And he stood there, I left his scrum for a bit to, see what McAvoy was saying, but he stood there, as you said, for 20 minutes. Like, it's not a lot to ask, but him standing there and answering every question and giving, long, good answers and insightful answers that he actually had to think about. Like, that's a good thing. That's a really good thing. You want that. And when you see younger guys, dip from their stall the minute they can after 5 minutes of questions, it's like, come on. Like, and we've had this conversation before. And I think how Marchand handles media, and I think I can't speak to this because I was not around for it, but you can. Like, Marchand does come from that time when you could just walk up to a guy in the locker room a little more easily and just say, "Hey, do you have a couple minutes?" Yep. And it was just better that way. Now things have gotten muddied and there's different factors. We're not going to get in all that, but I think that he is a good example of that and just being open. And he's, to me, like, I don't know the rest of the NHL. I don't know, the ins and outs of every guy in the NHL in terms of the interviewing, but to me, he's the most interesting guy in the NHL. I don't think there's any question about that.
Prize Picks is the largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America and the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Instead of battling thousands of other players that could be pros or sharks, you simply pick more or less than in 2 to 6 player stat projections, and you watch the winnings roll right in. Right now, you can take advantage of Caitlin Clark racking up triple doubles and dropping dimes in every game she's playing, or hop on the Jaron Duran train as he's posting big offensive numbers in just about every statistical category imaginable. One Caleb Williams passing yard gets you 1 win on Prize Picks every week in September. That's right. Only 1 yard gets you an automatic win every football weekend in September. 4 weeks of free W's. Don't miss the deal on Prize Picks because it's gone when September ends. You can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. Download the Prize Picks app today and use the code CLNS to get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code CLNS on Prize Picks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks, run your game. No, I think he is. I think he's got the most personality, and he's definitely the most quotable. And you see it like with the TNT guys, right? They always want to have him on mic'd up before the games and have him on the ice where, Biz is like chit-chatting with him and stuff because he's got the most personality. He's the funniest. He's the most interesting. Like, he's actually the one that I think is most likely to be a TV guy and probably like get scooped up by TNT like as soon as his career is over.
Yeah, I never thought of that in that sense, but that's a good point. He would be a great.
I think he's the kind
TV
of guy.
analyst.
The TV people will be all over him, and they'll throw all kinds of money at him to want him.
You're right.
To do stuff with them, and maybe Nesson finds a way to get him on there instead, and keep him around selfishly for like the Bruins instead. But like he could be a national media star, like if he wanted to be, and he could be one of these guys.
I would wonder if he would go more towards sort of his brand, like hunting and things like that. I wonder if he'd do that. But I agree. Like, I would love to see him on TNT. I always said about Bruce Cassidy that if he ever got let go by the Bruins, he would be the perfect person for a panel, like for TNT. He would make the most sense for it. And I still think if things go south in Vegas and he, kind of wants to chill for a year or two or whatever, I think the broadcast booth or that TNT panel makes the absolute most sense. So yeah, Marchand, but you're right. Marchand that's a good one. We're already planning his retirement. See, he's done. He's toast. All right. We're setting up his post-career stuff.
Sometimes you don't know though. I mean, you're right to like think about the hunting and the March Milko and all the other stuff. And maybe it's that he's made enough money where he's just going to like disappear somewhere. Like he used to say, he's going to go to a hut in Bora Bora somewhere and you're never going to see him again. Maybe he ends up going and doing that because he's got the money to do it and he just doesn't have anything to do with it. We used to say the same thing about Sean Thornton, though, that he was going to do TV and all that stuff when he retired, and he ended up going and working for the Panthers instead. So, sometimes you don't know.
Well, I guarantee you this. I don't know who's going to do it. It won't be me. But someone will write a really good book on the life of Brad Marchand. I don't know who it's going to be. I don't know when it's going to be. But to me, that seems like an obvious contender for a book.
Yes, and I hope he reaches out to me to write it when he's ready, because that would.
I don't want to say that, but yeah, you were one of my first people I thought of. It would. That would sell a ton.
Yes, and we would have a lot of fun going over old stories in order to write it. So put that in your memory bank if you're listening to this podcast, Brad Marchand. I will write your book someday, and I will let you take all the profits if you want. I will just write the book.
Yeah, you got to negotiate that. You got to take like 20% or whatever. You try to take a little bit. But all I ask is that I get a free copy. That's all I want.
There you go. You will. No questions asked. All right, let's go back to that first quote that I talked about. I'll say this now and kind of leave it at that, talking about his contract. I won't ever talk about contract stuff in the media. Whatever happens will stay internal between Sweens and our group. I'll leave it at that. There's enough respect between the two sides to just deal with it.
You think he's talking about something?
Do you have any thought whatsoever, any inclination after hearing that, after seeing the message that's being sent out there, if Brad Marchand is sending some kind of message out there to a certain player that has not come to an agreement with the Bruins on a contract and has been kind of vocal about, things going back to arbitration last year and the contract this year, do you feel like maybe this is leadership? This is some leadership coming from him, like, hey, that's not how we do it with the Bruins. Let's not, air our dirty laundry contract wise. Let's keep it behind closed doors and let them deal with it, kind of thing. Do you get that sense that there was any kind of subtext or message in what Marchand said about his contract?
Yeah, I mean, I have no inside information on this or anything like that on this. It comes at an interesting time. I mean, it comes right after Swayman made those comments on that podcast. It comes after, the last year of him being open about talking about it, and that's his decision to do that.
And I guess to add a little context, he was saying this after, I think it was Ken Campbell in the Hockey News had written something about Marchand and his contract, and maybe I didn't even read the piece, so I don't know, but it seemed to me the way Marchand was talking about, Campbell had either thrown out details or numbers, contract numbers or something that he thought he might know about negotiations between the Bruins and Brad Marchand. And Brad's like, that didn't come from us. He doesn't know what he's talking about, whatever. So I'm sure some of that, what he was saying there was about that and addressing that.
Yes.
But it feels to me like there was also this is how things should be approached. This is 36-year-old Brad Marchand, the team captain, sort of setting the tone for everybody else.
It's an interesting theory, and it was something that came to my mind of this comes at an interesting time. I mean, he was obviously asked about his own contract, but it comes after the Swayman stuff, comes in the middle of the Swayman stuff.
Yeah.
I wonder though, like if that would be kept, if keeping to his word of stuff like that being internal, would something that is also internal be him going to Swayman on his own and saying, hey, could you stop talking about this stuff? I'm not saying he has not. I don't know that he's done this. I'm just saying, like, I think his leadership style, and you might be able to speak on this better than I have because you've covered him for a lot longer.
Yeah.
But I would think his leadership style would be a little bit more like talking to that guy on his own in the room, not so much veiled shots in the media. But I mean, again, like, you can read the tea leaves. So that's the other end of it, where it's like, I get why someone would come to that conclusion, but I also wonder if that would be his leadership style.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think he's somebody that's afraid to address things with his teammates if he feels like it needs to be addressed. But I would say there's also like kind of a weird sort of thing about when it comes to contract stuff, about players talking about other players and their contract dealings. And like, that there is kind of like unwritten rules about like sort of staying out of that. And that might prohibit like that kind of a conversation from happening. Is like,
that's true.
There's certain things you will talk about with your teammates, and there's certain other things you're like, respect their like sort of privacy of not talking about it and not really addressing it or not dwelling on it. And, that might be one of those ones where it's kind of a gray area. Like, is that something that, somebody's individual contract situation? Am I going to go and tell them this is what you should be doing? Like, am I going to say that to somebody else when it's kind of their business? Like, that one is an itch. Like, he might have, and who knows? This is all theoretical. This is all stuff we're kicking around. But I think what he said, I think, is an effective way to sort of lead by example of saying, that's like, true. This is how we do it. This is how I do it. This is how it should be done. Instead of preaching to somebody like, hey, you shouldn't be doing it that way. That's not the right way to do it. This is a different way to lead without like getting in somebody's face and really like making it uncomfortable or crossing a line that maybe you shouldn't, as far as like, fellow players and getting involved in their business and stuff like that. So it's kind of a murky area, and it's a gray area for sure. But it's an interesting point that you bring up about that and whether like, you would just address it head on. But I feel like at a certain point, any player that or any captain, any leader in a pro sports dressing room, there's a limit to how much stuff you want about like contracts, about like stuff, like about all that, like it's not a great road to go down when you continue to like talk about that stuff or hearken back to it or dwell on it. And, I like Sway a lot. I really do. But like, he's shown in the last couple of years a little propensity to, sort of dwell on the contract stuff and dwell on the feelings, the hard feelings it might have caused, or, the sort of like what he was feeling and how it made him feel, like all that stuff. And like, it's a good sign that he's moved, sort of pivoted to like, it's a business. This is all business stuff. Like, there's not feelings and emotions here. It's more just like getting educated and it being a business. I think that's the right way to handle it. But I think at a certain point too, like you almost see every Bruins player say the same thing. Like, I'm letting my agent handle that. I'm letting the GM handle that. They'll let me know when a deal is done. And, I'll find out that stuff. And you almost see uniformly, like Pasternak has definitely done that the last few times he's had a contract up. And Marchand's always done that. And most of the players have done that. And it's kind of a learning experience, but maybe this is Brad Marchand's way of sort of like trying to nudge Swayman a little bit. Like, hey, let's let the agent and the GM do this stuff. And, let's like just kind of give a vanilla answer and then not address it and move on and not create a bigger firestorm than it needs to be. Because I think if Swayman continues to talk about it, it's going to become a bigger thing. Like, the more he talks about it.
Yeah, I mean, him talking about it on that podcast, giving meaty answers, gave us like a week's worth of podcast. And so this is the thing, right? Like, from a media perspective, I like that Swayman is open about this stuff. But of course, why would I not? Because it gives us, something to talk about. It gives us insight into things and
the
how he's
absolute
thinking.
deadest of the dead season for hockey news, for Bruins news, for NHL news. Jeremy Swayman went on Mark Lewis is Cool podcast, whatever the hell that is, and
Shut
started
Up
talking
Mark.
about
That's the name of it. The Shut Up Mark podcast.
Whatever. Shut up, Mark. Mark Lewis is cool.
I listen every day, Haggs. All right, that's my
Twitter
favorite
handle?
podcast.
Whatever.
Okay, I can't stop listening.
Bottom line is Mark Lewis is cool. Shut up, Mark Lewis. Whatever, Mark Lewis. Mark Lewis can't lose. Whatever it's called. That was absolute, logs on the fire at the deadest time of year for hockey news and for hockey anything. So
pouring just like gasoline all
thank you,
over
Jeremy
it.
Swayman, for giving us something to talk about the last 2 weeks.
I that's the
I
thing.
appreciate that.
So you have that end of it, right? And that's why I enjoy that he's open about that stuff.
Yes.
I also think the Marchand Swayman juxtaposition is interesting because both come from a different generation of Bruins. You have Marchand, who comes from this generation where, guys signed team-friendly deals. Almost every deal was team-friendly. Let's create cap space, this and that. Now you have this next gen where you had McAvoy's contract, which was not super team-friendly. And, you've had these other deals that are much bigger and much more than the deals of the past.
Deal was closer to market value too this time around. Yeah,
exactly. And so I think, you have that shift in perception, and neither's right or wrong, by the way, because you have the team friendly stuff, and the reality is they won that whole time, but they didn't win a cup after 2011. And I'm not trying to trash it. And then you have the other end of it where you're getting the most money, but you are losing out on potentially some extra talent on the roster. So it's just, I think it's also a shift in sort of how they view things contractually and that it's such a different generation. Of one generation wants, less so they can win more. The other just wants the most amount of money, or at least market value. So, and I'm not saying one side doesn't want to win and one side doesn't want money. I'm just saying that's how it's played out. So.
Yes, I agree. And you're right. It is a very different way of thinking. And generationally, they're different, right? Brad Marchand's 36. Jeremy Swayman's 25. They're literally from kind of different generations. Their mindsets are very different, just like how they grew up, what the NHL was like when they grew up, sort of, what they're in now. Just the general way of thinking, I think, is very different.
And didn't Marchand also mention on Tuesday his financial security? And there's someone again who's been on a relatively cheaper deal, or at least less than what he would be valued at on the market. Who I forget what quote it was, but mentioned his own financial security. And you also have to realize, he understands that. And so I think I think it's sort of that veteran presence, and I just think that two different ways of thinking. I mean, he would never admit to oh yeah, that was a shot at Sway. Yeah, of course. So all we can do is sit here and theorize. I don't even think
it's a shot. I wouldn't say it's a shot. I would just say it's leadership. I would just say it's hey.
I don't mean like a shot. I just mean sort of
that's how we do things here. You know what I mean? It's more of that, being captain saying, hey, that's not kind of how it's been done here, and we should keep that stuff sort of in house and not. Not go public with a lot of that stuff, and sort of that's not how the business has been done here, that sort of thing. It's more of a leadership thing and kind of a veteran sort of advice thing too, I think, more than anything else, because I think a lot of these guys that have been around for a while have seen different strategies or different ways to do it not work or blow up in your face. And Brad Marchand's done plenty of stuff that's blown up in his face. So I think sometimes he's trying to help other players, younger players, avoid those traps and avoid some of that stuff when he says these things. So I think it's all interesting, but I don't think he's taking shots necessarily.
No, I don't. Shots, I that's a little negative, but I mean more so along the lines of what you said, where it's that hey, best don't do that.
Yeah. So. That's not typically how it's been done here. Looking for concert tickets for the rest of this summer or early fall? Last year, I used Game Time to get tickets to Def Leppard, Poison, Motley Crue, and Joan Jett at Fenway Park. And you can go out and get Fenway Park concert tickets this summer and this fall with Game Time. Pearl Jam's coming in September. I believe Post Malone is also coming to Fenway Park in September. So why not use Game Time to get your tickets for those concerts, in addition to the football action that you're going to have that's just starting up as well, that you can use Game Time to get Patriots tickets or any tickets to either NFL or college football all around. So it's fantastic using Game Time right now, taking the guesswork out of buying concert tickets with Game Time. You can have all-in pricing, which is the feature shows you the total up front with no surprise fees at checkout. Seat views, you can get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. The lowest price guarantee, which is my favorite, or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply again, but create an account and redeem the code CLNS for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right. One other thing about Marchand that I just want to say quick before we move on. Like, I also wonder, and I wrote this at one point, I can't remember, one of the columns I wrote recently. I wondered if he's at 36 entering sort of that phase now as we approach his new contract, his final year of his contract. Is he entering that phase where he's going to start signing 1-year deals with incentives like Krejci and Bergeron did towards the end of their career? Is this not going to be a multi-year deal, like a 3-year deal that he's going to sign with the Bruins, kind of like the one Stamkos signed with Nashville? But is this instead going to be like 1-year deals that are cap friendly, that are incentive laden, but don't necessarily always come out to be cap friendly? It's just you're passing off the cap problems to the year afterwards. But like now that he's over 35, a lot of times when players hit that level, they start getting those 1-year deals that are structured a little differently. And you wonder if that is also like something that might be happening here too. And that might be what ends up being his contract. And like, you know, he's the kind of guy I think that would accept that kind of a deal or accept that kind of thing rather than going for every last dollar. And I think that's sort of within the messaging of what he's saying here as well.
He could. I could see it. It would fall in line with him and sort of his mindset and mentality on contracts. I do wonder, though, you know, again, like we've said, you know, he wants to play forever. So, you know, does he not even want the option of retirement or something after 1 year? You know, like, does he just want to be stable for 2 or 3 year, you know, 2 or 3 year deal, set that, and then do 1-year deals or figure out your career from there? So I don't know. I mean, I'm fascinated to see what route they take, what the money is, like what the number is on that, what would the incentives be? Because again, like you know, the incentive end of it, you don't know if you're gonna get injured during a year, especially getting older. Like you have all those unknowns too. So I would think like top of my mind was like a 3-year deal. But again, 1-year deal, I could see. I could easily see.
Yeah, I think it could be either or, but I think that's going to be fascinating because a lot of players in Marchand's situation, and maybe this is what Tampa wanted to do with Stamkos and why he said, adios, I'm out of here, I'm going to sign with Nashville, is they wanted him to start doing the 1-year contract thing like Bergeron and other players have done and go year to year. Well, you know, you're our guy, you're never going to play anywhere else, but like this is what we're going to do moving forward. And he was like, screw you, I'm not doing that. I'm going to Nashville instead. Like, who knows if that's actually what happened, but maybe that is, you know, the backstory, or that is what was going on. Who knows? And maybe, you know, that approaching it that way could, you know, have the same kind of reaction here. I don't think so with Marchand. I think he'd be more open to it. And I think he'd understand, having seen that Bergie did that he wouldn't have a problem with it. Just understand that they're sort of in a different, you know, they have the security, they want to win. They're sort of in a different place than they might've been when they were, you know, going for the big money multi-year deals, and he'd be okay with that. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. Let's ask one more question here before we go. Hi, Joe. The question I had was, there seems to be a lot of speculation about where Merkulov, Lysell, and now Tyler Johnson could fit on the roster. And I haven't talked to you about Tyler Johnson, Evan. Let's assume that either Lysell or Johnson snag the second right wing position, since Merkulov has never played right wing. If, and this is a big if in my book, and one I really don't see happening, but what if Merkulov wins the third center job over Patra and Patra is sent to Providence? How do you see this shaking out long term? That would leave Patra stuck in Providence for the foreseeable future with all the center positions locked up. Even if he plays his ass off, they won't have space for him as a center, and I'm afraid they would really hurt his development and confidence, as he's proven he's an NHL player. has he really proven he's an NHL player? He played like 30 something games and then got hurt, and his production tailed off towards the end of the 30 something game. Like, I think he's shown he can play in the league, but I wouldn't say he's proven he's an NHL player yet, long term yet. That would be my side. But let me finish.
Okay.
Would they trade him, since I do think he's a valuable asset and is proven, unlike Lysell and Merkelov at this point? So the Bruins would get something back in return. He's a popular player in Boston, so I'm not sure how well burying him in Providence or trading him would sit with the fans or players for that matter. Thanks, Joe. Love the podcast. And that's from Kim K on Facebook. And
thank you,
I think this is going pretty extreme, far down like one road as to how it could go this year. That you would stick Matt Poitras in Providence to start the year, that he would be buried there all year, that he would become pissed and want to be traded, and
that would be hilarious. It's like, I'm out, goodbye, send me anywhere else. I hate this place.
But like, I still don't see him going to Providence as a permanent thing if he starts the year there, or like something that's going to be damaging or hurt his development. Like, I think if they put him down there, it's going to be because it's good for his development, because you saw he kind of hit a wall when he was in Boston with the NHL at a certain point where the production really slowed down, where he seemed to lose confidence offensively, where frankly his skating is not as good as it needs to be for him to be consistently effective at the NHL level. Like, and then he got hurt too. Like, the physicality at his age where he needs to get stronger, like, became an issue as well, a hurdle he couldn't get over. So if he goes down to Providence, I think it's a positive thing. It's not a stagnant thing. Like, it's not Matt Poitras has scored 30 goals and 100 points in the NHL. He's got nothing left to prove in Providence. So putting him down there would be stagnating him and hurting him. Like, he's not that. That's not the situation we're looking at right now. Like, he got he was really good at the start of the year. He had a good month, maybe 2 months. But that does not make him an established everyday NHL player in my mind yet, especially like an established everyday, like, top 9 center.
No. And the thing is, like, I think I don't want to say likely, but there's a good chance that exact thing happens. Merkulov is the third line center and Poitras in Providence. And I agree with you. Like, I'll pose this to the listeners. Would you rather Poitras be the number one center in Providence, play in every situation, or would you rather him be up here as the third line center and playing in, sparing situations? And you also have to consider the Georgi Merkulov. He fits more of that description of what is there left to prove or do or develop in doing so, in being down in Providence. Like, that's the other end of it too. So Merkulov, I think, is 3 years older than Poitras as well. So, like, he's played a lot more pro games over the last couple of years. So I would not be surprised about that at all. I don't think Poitras is going to be asking for a trade. If he is, things must have went horribly wrong. You must hate Providence if that's the case. The other part, though, the first part, I want to mention another Marchand comment that I noticed yesterday. So someone asked him, I thought it was you, maybe because you were right in front of me, so I thought you were asking every question. But I don't think it was you. I forget who asked it. Someone asked about, the second line right wing spot. Who's going to be with him?
I think that was Scott McLaughlin. I believe
it was Scott. It was Scott. Yep. Yeah, it was Scott. And Marchand basically said, we're looking for someone who's going to be responsible, not trying to do too much. We don't care if you can dangle through 3 people. Didn't sound like Fabian Lysell. Now, again, if Lysell comes in and has a kick-ass training camp, they're going to have no choice but to put Lysell on that right side. But I think, one of these things, and like, I want to see Lysell on the second line. I want to see what Fabian Lysell can do. I think now is the time. But does Brad Marchand, 36-year-old captain, veteran, does he want to play on the second line with someone who's going to have those deficiencies? Does he want to play with someone in a contract year that plays like that? It didn't sound like it. So, like, that's where I do wonder, could he call his own shot where it's like, no, I'd rather someone like a Morgan Geekie, a Trent Frederick start in that spot rather than a rookie. Like, and again, that comes down to the coaches. But like I've said all along, I think I want to see Lysell there, give him first dibs, whatever. But is Brad Marchand going to be on board with that? I think that's the other end of it.
Yeah, I think that Brad Marchand's going to have a very vocal say in who's going to end up playing there. And I think Charlie Coyle will too, frankly. But I think that you see that that's kind of Jim Montgomery's MO, is to talk to his players and as veteran guys and get their feedback, especially the ones that have been around like as long as Marchand have, the future Hall of Fame type guys, and the guys that you really respect and trust their opinion. And like that used to happen. David Krejci used to like pick his line mates or have very strong feedback and strong say into who he was going to play with. And I think David Pastrnak certainly has that kind of thing now, with that understanding now with Jim Montgomery as well. And I think that just comes with them having been around for a long time and sort of like the respect factor that Montgomery has for those players. So I do think that will factor in. And I think that's a good thing. Like, I think that will put young players on notice that they have to play a certain way and to a certain level and have, a certain standard that they have to play up to if they're going to play with those guys in a top 6 role. Because like he mentioned, he's like, we're going to be playing against the other team's best lines. We have to play at both ends. Like, you're going to need somebody that pays attention to detail and like is a good two-way player and plays hard at both ends and doesn't have a lot of weaknesses, just by virtue of the guys they're playing against, and has to sort of like be able to keep up with Coyle and Marchand offensively, and what they're able to do and how they think the game and the experience level that they have. So like, I think you look at all that stuff and it's certainly part of it, and it's going to have an impact on who ends up playing there long-term. There's no doubt about it. But Brad Marchand was also a guy that really loved the way Matt Poitras played at the beginning of last year.
Yep.
And wanted to play with him. And if he likes the young player and if he thinks the player's got it, he'll request that the player be there, and he'll want to get looks with that player, and he'll want to see what it looks like. So, and he'll encourage that. And I think he's always been like that. Like, I think those guys want, if there's a young player that's going to make Coyle and Brad Marchand better and more productive, they're going to want that guy playing with them.
Oh yeah, but I mean, just the MO of Lysell,
that kind of guy. If Lysell brings speed and skill and an offensive spark to that line, they would definitely want to play with him.
Which I think he easily could do. He easily could do that
for sure. But I don't see, though. Getting back to the question, I don't see. If Poitras ends up in Providence, I don't see it being an issue. I don't see it being something where it's going to disenchant somebody to the point that they need to be traded or they want to be traded. Like, I don't think any of that is going to happen. I think if he goes down there, he's probably going to go down there for a relatively short period of time, build up his confidence, build up his game, develop things a little bit. Maybe some of the details will get developed that he didn't have a chance to because he jumped straight to the NHL last year. Like, people forget he really didn't have much AHL time last year. Like, it's not something, He probably could have benefited from that last year, and he would benefit from it some this year, just like Mason Lohrei benefited from being in the NHL a bit last year. All of those young players, I think, benefit from that, especially if he goes down there and he plays top-line minutes, he's playing in all situations, like he's in a much bigger role. That's going to help him as well at the NHL level when he goes back there. So, like, I think it's a no-lose situation. I think if he's good enough and he flashes in camp and he has a camp like last year and he ends up as your third-line center to start the year, great, fantastic.
I agree.
He jumped over those hurdles. He worked hard all summer, clearly. He came in on a mission. He won the job. Like, he's ready to go. And he's going to start really establishing himself as an NHL player. Like, him going through a full season, putting up pretty good numbers, that's when you're an established NHL player. He's not all the way there yet.
No,
but even if he has to go down to Providence and sort of work on his craft and develop a little bit, that is perfectly fine too. Like, no issues there. I think that will be a development where he'll be up with the team within a month or two, and we'll see him in the second half of the year come in there and be like a third line center and be a playmaker and be what we've seen, which is he's one of the better offensively skilled Bruins forwards that they have in the organization.
I mean, last year, people forget, last year's training camp was such a special situation, and that, like, he could not go to Providence. It was either juniors or in the NHL.
And they were desperate for a center at the beginning of the year.
Yes, they were desperate for a center. And everyone thought he was going back initially. And then he lit the world on fire in training camp and in preseason games. And he legitimately wouldn't allow them to send him back because he was so good. And as you said, they needed centers. So it was like, holy crap, Bergeron and Krejci leave, and this guy pops up out of the ground. So, like, that, again, last year was a special situation. Now I think you can really develop him. You get your hands on him. You've got him in the AHL. If this is how it goes, if he lights the world on fire again in training camp, then you got to keep him here. I don't think you don't stuff him in Providence just to do it. But again, if there are signs that, because he had shoulder surgery, so if there are signs that he needs, some seasoning down in Providence, that's fine. And I think it gives you a great opportunity to see what you have in Georgi Merkulov, who, again, as I said earlier, has played, I think, a combined, over 100 games the last 2 years, or well over 100 games the last 2 years in the AHL. I think he has over 100 points as well. So, to me, I think, I don't think people should be alarmed if Lysell starts the year in Providence. It's not a bad thing. And now if he stinks in preseason games, you can, take that away. But I don't think that's going to happen. And I still think he could be okay and still be down in Providence to start the year.
Yeah. I don't think fans should be alarmed if Lysell, Patra, and Merkulov all end up in Providence and Tyler Johnson ends up on the NHL team.
Yeah.
Because I think he's a guy that could help the Bruins, frankly. I think he's a guy that still got something a little bit in the tank. Right shot, versatile center, could play center or right wing. And that's the kind of guy maybe you put him in and, guys like Coyle and Marchand really vibe well with him and like playing with him. And he's got tons of playoff experience, 2-time Stanley Cup winner. He's not the guy that he was when he was on the triplet line with Kucherov and Andre Palat, obviously, when he was with Tampa. But he's still a guy that I think could be a fairly effective player for them. So it's a really interesting dynamic to add to the mix of all those young players that are going to compete for that spot. But bottom line, I don't think it's a bad thing at all if they all end up down in Providence, all the young guys to start the year. All right, Evan, thank you very much for joining us.
Of course. Thanks for having me, Haggs.
You got it, my friend. Thank you, everybody else out there, for listening. We'll see you at the rink.